Thank you for coming. I know most of you, which is a surprise actually, because often I don't. So usually I give a slight introduction as to how come I'm doing this, so I'll make it very brief. If I use language that doesn't make any sense to you, please pull me up because I can always rephrase it. If I talk too quickly, tell me to slow down, because that's just a character trait of mine. I stopped apologising for that when I studied astrology, because I had a stacked third house. So that's why it's the way it is. I studied archetypes with a lady called Carolyn Mace about 20 odd years ago. I was blessed to be, does her name ring a bell?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
I was blessed to be the last of a very small class of hers. There were 20 people. After we had her intensely for weeks. After that, she went out and, well, she's very famous in America anyway, but mostly her groups were not less than 200 and often up to 1,000 people. And you just can't learn in the same way when you've got that amount of people in a workshop. So we were very blessed. I went over there thinking I would be able to, I could read into energy fields, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, but I did not have her accuracy physically. And so in my naivety, I went over there thinking that that's what I'd be able to do, increase that skill. I'm the classic of, if you want to make God laugh, tell her your plans, because that wasn't what it was about at all. So, just turning it up. So, this is where I learned the archetypes. I'm sure you can relate to, there are some things in life where you take to like a duck to water, and you just know you know them, but you don't know how come you know them. The archetypes is one of them for me. So what goes with the archetypes, and there's a few people in the room that have had a reading, so don't talk to me, in the break talk to them, because they're the ones that will tell you the truth of how they feel about it. So in the archetypal map of the world, there are 3 different levels of consciousness. So what I want to explain to you tonight is more or less a personal journey on your part, but also what's going on out there in the world, because it's a very confusing place, and this map of the world helps to make sense of what's happening all over the place. You do not have to take notes unless you want to. I'll just give me your email address, there's a name and a piece of paper and a thing, and I'll send it to you. So you don't have to take addresses and make notes if you don't want to. So when I studied with Carolyn, I learned the archetypes with the archetypes, which is nothing new. The term archetypes goes back to the days of Plato, so it's not a new term at all. What she did brilliantly in her book called Anatomy of the Spirit was to pull together the ancient truths of the Kabbalah, the Jewish Kabbalistic tree of life. She pulled together the Indian chakras, and she pulled together the Christian sacraments. I personally believe it's the best book she's ever written, more than the others. But after that, she wrote a book called Sacred Contracts, which is about the archetypes, and I don't know if anyone has read it. The first third of the book is terrific. The next 2/3 is confusing. The reason it's confusing is because she leaves this map out, even though that's what I was taught. And when I challenged her about why she did it, she just said, oh no, it's too much karmic responsibility if I put that in the book, what would people do with that? So she didn't want to do it that way, and instead use the astrological wheel to get the foundation for the charts. She gets you to ask 10 different questions per house, and that in the end, by the time you've asked, you know, whatever, 140 odd questions, you just get confused because you don't quite know where you're going. But this map of the world, which I'll start to show you in a minute, absolutely cuts to the chase, and so it makes it instantly understandable. So Jung's levels of consciousness have been around a long time as well, and so it's based on 3 different levels of understanding. The first level is called the tribal level. If you're sitting in the tribal level, I'm sorry I've got my back to you, but it all makes sense. In this level, the tribal column, you believe you are just your physical reality. And because you're just the physical reality, you just believe you also have 4 senses, or 5 senses I should say. Sight, sound, taste, touch and smell. So in this column, if it's not in the physical world, it doesn't exist. In this column, you believe in authority figures. So you give your power away to lawyers, to doctors, to parents, of course, extended authority figures who tell you what's going on in your world. So if you're diagnosed with cancer and the doctor says you have 2 years to live, that's exactly what you'll have, is 2 years to live. So here, it's whatever the authority figures say is true. In this column, you believe in duality. And by duality, I mean good, bad, right, wrong, yin yang, all the things that are based on duality. The whole planet's based on duality. So if somebody does something to you that is really hurts you, then you believe in what's called Hammurabi's code, which is an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. So you want revenge in this column. Someone's coming. Is the door open? Okay. So in this column, when you're, I can't read my writing, this is where politics sit here in this column, and this is where religion sits. I'm sorry if I'm sort of going to offend anybody when I talk about religion. There's wonderful things about religion, but unfortunately a lot of what religion is based on is it instills fear into you. And mostly all religions have. There's a wonderful, you can start off and you can be preaching about love, but especially fundamentalist religion as well. It talks about a judgmental God, a challenging God, a damaging God. And the reason that is done, there's a purpose why that message is given to you, so that you can become controllable in this column. So this is where you add a control and someone has control over you, because that's the point of fear anyway, to have control over you. In this column, you're unconscious, you have no idea what's running you or what's going on in the world, and therefore you take no responsibility for what's going on. So in this column, you have to, the victim consciousness that arises within you when someone does something to you, you need to blame everyone else for what's going on in your world. It's the government's fault, it's the school system's fault, it's your parents' fault, it's the partner's fault. So you cannot take any responsibility for what's happening in this column. It's a challenge, a time to do this. In this column, this is where our addictions sit. We're all addicted. We all carry at least 10 addictions. It just depends to what. Our 3 main addictions have been for a long time: money, sex and food. Because they're all love substitutes, and using the language of chakras, they sit at the 2nd chakra. So money is God on this planet whether we like it or not, and it's used enormously as a control mechanism. One day it's going to change, but not right now, but we're in the process of it. Whether I'll see it in my lifetime, I don't know. Sex is used by both men and women as a bargaining power, and here's more people, and food is used as a love substitute. So women used to have the priority on food, but men are catching up. And in Australia, that's gone right off the top in terms of what we do. But the biggest addictions that I've seen in the last 20 years of doing this work on archetypes, but the last 40 years for doing alternative healing, our number 1 addiction, which might be a shock to you, is our addiction to mind. And that's because this is the mind realm. The earth plane is the mind realm. The hardest thing to do on the earth plane is to find your heart. Please don't hear me saying you're not capable of loving. I'm not saying that at all. But we are addicted to mind because we are, a left brain. In this column, you are predominantly left brain. You live in a left brain world, and that's all our school system validates you for. If you're very right-brained, very creative, very into all sorts of expressions, you struggle in our left brain school system, because it only serves, if it's lucky, 25% of the people that it teaches. Most people don't learn in a linear manner. Most people learn in another way. But in this column, it's all about the left brain, which means if it's not rational, logical and scientific, and it comes from that basis, it doesn't exist. It's not valid anymore. So this is all about this column, and I'll keep coming back to this column, by the way. Here in this column, you think you are your possessions. So you believe in the Disneyland map of the world in this column. This is where you feel that if you have, by the time you're in your 40s, if you're driving a nice car, if you have a house, If you've got a degree on the wall and you've got money in the bank, you've made it. Because you believe that this is who you are, you believe in the Disneyland or Brady Bunch map of the world that says, once I have all this established, my life will be hunky-dory and I'll be very happy from there on in. It's not true, never has been true and never will be true, but that's the map of the world we're sold, unfortunately. As I said, you're unconscious here. It's totally your physical reality that happens over here. You're only here, you believe you are only, because of the mind, you also believe what you are is the body, and you're nothing more than the body. And so, in this column, you have a field day on what the media tells you. Because here, you give your power away to extended authority figures, and as a child, when you're born, you have no other option but to take on board what your parents tell you or any other extended authority figure, your culture, and we're totally multicultural in Australia now, extended authority figures like grandparents or older siblings, your peer group as you grow up, the media of the day and your school system, all will tell you as a child who you are and what you're meant to be and how that should look. By the time you hit puberty, will the real you stand up and be counted? Because you can't be anything else but what everyone has told you you are. And so in this column, you're very much programmed into believing what you should be and what must happen in your life. And you run that program. So if you're born culturally into a family where it's expected that you become a doctor or a lawyer, particularly the Chinese culture where you're, a lot is expected of you, then you have to fulfill the tribe's need. I'm just giving an aside to this story. I recently was in Bali with my daughter and she and I experienced a water goddess ceremony over there. This young lass was born into the culture to do this sort of ceremony, and it was part of her lineage to do that, and she refused. She said, no, I want to get married, I want to have children. And they said, but you can't. And she said, well, I don't want to do it. She got seriously ill on death's door. The medical model couldn't do anything for her. And so they took her, they just said, we don't know, it's a mystery illness. They didn't know what to do. They took her to see some of the shamans over there in, did I say Peru? I mean Bali, sorry. Thank you. So they took her to the shamans over there and they said it's because she's not fulfilling her destiny. She has to, this is her lineage, and if she doesn't do it, she'll die. It's very simple. So her parents begged her to become the water priestess. It's official, the Indonesian government calls her the High Water Priestess. That's her title, that's what she does. So she gave in to her parents, and this is totally tribal. So we went there, and it was a beautiful water ceremony, but all I could feel from her and see in her energy field was this huge sadness coming from her. And she actually needed no training. As soon as she agreed to do it, she got up, and it's a 45-minute to a 60-minute ceremony, and she's talking all the time and invoking all the energies, etc., etc., and she knew it off by heart. She had not one skerrick of training, and it was her correct lineage. But she didn't want it. But to resist the tribe and to do what she wanted to do literally meant her death. And that's how strong tribal culture can be. So she actually had no choice about doing that unless she wanted to pass over and come back again. So, to get you out of this level of thinking that you are just your physical body, you're just your mind, you experience duality, you're just your five senses, everything's rational, logical or scientific, to get you out of that, what we have to do at some point is experience a crisis in our lives. You name it, there's loads of different crises that can happen.
Crisis
So,
music.
Who cares? It's all about going with the flow. Being wiped out financially, will do it. Moving halfway around the world, will do it. Experiencing any sort of severe illness, particularly cancer, which is so common these days. The death of a parent, losing a job. It doesn't matter, you can go on and on and on, whatever has to happen. But what it will do will thrust you out of this column where all you want to do in the tribal level is stay in your comfort zone. That's what you work very, very hard to do, is to stay in your comfort zone. So it takes the crisis, because of our own volition, we don't willingly go there. Have you noticed? Often we have to, if you don't listen to the whispers, you have to hear a shout. It's funny how that works. Ask me how I know. I've had many Mack truck experiences that have pushed me onto the next stage. So then it pushes you into the column of individuation. Now this column is categorised by two words, which is why we don't like being there: chaos and madness. Because this is where the rug gets pulled out from under your feet big time. And we don't like being in this column. It can be that severe. You hit the dark night of the soul and you can stay here for years, depending on your attitude and where you are with victim consciousness to what's gone on in your life and the need to blame someone else. This is your inner journey in this column, whereas in this column it becomes all in the physical end. This is your outer journey and how you project to the outside world. This then becomes your inner journey. So in this column in here, it is that scary that 9 out of 10 people, when they hit this column of chaos and madness, excuse my English, go, holy shit, this is scary. And that's where you have to run back here to the tribal column and you have to turn to one of your addictions to make you feel better. Money, sex, food, but there's myriads of addictions. You know, of course, the internet, Facebook, Twitter is a sign of the times. You know, it wasn't there 20 years ago, but it is now. And it's a massive addiction to a lot of people. Exercise is an addiction. Retail therapy, you know, there's so many. Sport is an addiction. There's so many addictions that we all run. And some of them are obscure. My biggest addictions have been being the workaholic, because that's all my parents validated me for, was working hard. I was never allowed to sit down and do nothing in my childhood. That's why I knitted so much. It was the only reason I could justify sitting down, was to keep knitting. Because otherwise you weren't allowed to. I know it sounds ridiculous, but that's what I did. So getting rid of being the workaholic has been a major exercise for me. And I just watch it run throughout my whole family. My second biggest addiction has been surrogating for other people's illnesses, because I'm an identical twin. Twins don't have any boundaries, so they always are surrogating for other people. So a lot of the illnesses, and I've had a lot of it this lifetime, has been not mine. I've taken them on board for everyone else. How dumb is that? We have enough crap of our own, we don't need anyone else's, but that's just what twins do. Twins, especially identical twins, have come here to learn how to individuate, whereas other people often have come here to learn the exact opposite of that. But there are many addictions. Some people have an addiction, there's a strong addiction with the need to be right, believe it or not. It's a huge addiction for a lot of people. We inherit all these things. All the addictions are inherited, as I said, by your tribe on some level or other. Some you bring in with you, and the chart will show you what you bring in with you, but often you acquire them here. So back to the middle column, this journey here can be really, really scary. 1 in 10 has the courage to hang out in this middle column and go, okay guys, why have I needed this Mack truck experience? What's going on that my thinking or my behaviour is so screwy, I needed this sort of wake-up call. But it takes courage to ask that question, and even more courage to hear the answer, trust me, because you may not like what you hear, especially when it says, leave your marriage, change your job, move here, go there. It's a lot when you have to hear that stuff. So this is the inner journey that goes on, and I'm sure you can relate to many different times that this has happened to you. Because if you're the person that has the courage to hang out here, this is where you start your journey of your personal development starts in this column. Because here in the tribal level, you'll never think you need any personal development. It's everyone else's fault. So when the marriage is breaking down, or it's all their fault in the tribe. It's never yours, it's everyone else's. But in this column, you start to take responsibility for what's going on, and you start the self-development journey here into the personal and who am I. So this is where the existential crisis starts to happen over here. What's really going on? I remember it so clearly when this happened to me. I was mid-30s. And so I remember I was vacuuming. How boring is that? But I remember it well, vacuuming and thinking, my God, there's got to be more to this life than being someone's mother or someone's wife or doing the work I was doing. What's the real purpose for us being here? And when you ask those sort of questions in your way, your guardian angel rubs its hands together and said, oh goody, now I can get off the couch and go to work. Because what it brings up in you is everything that you're not. If you start to ask, what's the higher purpose for being here, then what happens in this column is showing you who you're not more than who you are, to start off with in this column. So it's a scary journey. Often you get to feel very alone because hardly anyone in your tribe goes with you and you do it on your own, and it's scary. When I started alternative healing well over 30 years ago, I didn't know anyone doing my work, and you know, I started off with Reiki. So she went, what's this Reiki stuff? Because there was only one Reiki master in Australia at that time. You know, nobody had heard of it. Now there's millions of them and Reiki masters on every street corner, and you can do it in a weekend and whatever. So you do get to feel very alone. It's often part of the journey. This is where you start to understand you're not just the left brain over here, and you start to open up to your right brain in this column, and that equals your creativity, because you start to realize that you have blocked out over 50% of who you are by not using your right brain. And good on you, Deb, for doing what you're doing here in this journey. It's a massive column to stay in here in what happens. So in this column, and I'm a typical of this, in this column, in a tribal level, because you think you are your mind, you therefore only use the word, and this happened to me, think. That's all you do, is you just think. In this column, this word starts to appear in your vocabulary. I didn't know the word feel existed until I was in my 30s. Isn't that pathetic? But it's true. Because in my family, we only ever use the word think. We never use the word feel. My parents, well, my mother in particular, is totally emotionally dysfunctional. So she's still shut down, you know, bless her cotton socks. But she was perfect for my growth, because I needed to have that upbringing before I could start to look what else was outside the square. So in this column, because you're unconscious, you are totally asleep in this column, and you have no idea that there's anything else outside that reality. In this column, you begin to wake up that there is much, much more in the world than what you've been taught. I'll keep coming back to this. So, to get you out of this column of individuation and over here to the symbolic level, then here you become, what has to happen to move between this is the epitome of the word surrender. Surrender has many, many layers to it. You think you've done it and, you know, you got your act together, and then the next crisis happens and you go right back to the beginning again. So it has many, many levels to it over here. Here you become fully awake. Here you become in this column conscious about who you are. Here you think you're what's called a Homo sapien, and because you only have 5 senses here. Over here you become multisensory, and you become what's called a Homo noeticus, which means multisensory being. So you realise in the symbolic level you are so much more than the body. In fact, you know you're not even the body. You understand over here the body is just a garment. It is something that you borrowed, and that's all that it is. It's nothing more than that. It's a tool in your toolkit. Here you become totally congruent in this column, and you live from this congruency between the mind and the heart. Whereas in the tribal level, you're just mind. The heart doesn't get a look in. You don't know how to feel. You just think in this column. Here you start to do the journey into self-development and understand. Here in this column, you are working with your subconscious and your understanding. So you're starting to wake up and you're realising how much is buried in the subconscious. Whereas over here, you become fully conscious and you realise you're this multi-sensory being over here. Here you take full responsibility for what's going on in your life, and the thought of ever blaming anyone else never enters the equation. Doesn't occur to you that that's what you'd be doing, because you know over in this column, no matter what's going on, there's no need to blame anyone else, because in this column, because you're conscious, you remember the cosmic joke that's happening here on this earth plane, which is, yes, I wrote the script before I got here. I just forgot who are the characters that I put in my play, like your parents and partners and everyone else. So you're fully awake and you take full responsibility, because you know there's no accidents about anything. That all of it is part of what you wrote before you even came here. So you take full responsibility for what's going on. In this column, you need certain qualities to hang out. You become holistic over in this column, and you start to realize things like everything is a hologram over here. So whatever's going on around you, you recognize as the mirror to what's going on. So you pay attention over here to the synchronicities, particularly to threes. So if something happens 3 times in a row, you know it's your higher self, spirit, whatever you want to call it, trying to get a message through to you, and you start to pay attention to the signals. Whereas here you're so unconscious you don't even take notice of the signals. So here you start to really understand that everything on this planet has a mirroring aspect or quality to you. That no matter what's going on, and it doesn't matter if you're talking about your kids, how your kids are playing out, they're a mirror of you and where you're at. How your partner is playing out is a mirror of you and where you're at. You may not always be able to read the signals well, but it's going on because everything is a hologram over here and there's nothing separate. It's all completely part of the whole. So it's a lot to hang on to. So here, whereas you're unconscious, here you're starting to wake up. Over here, you are close to finishing off whatever lessons or karma, whatever word it is that you want to put onto it, that you've come here to do. And if you live there. This is the level of a highly evolved being, the symbolic level, Christ, Buddha, those beings at Lhasa, those beings that have been on the planet to live here over in this column. I'll give you the good news now to start off with. I've done over 18,000 chart readings, which is a lot of chart readings. I've never met anyone yet that has all 12 of their archetypes sitting at the symbolic level. It's impossible. Yet. But I believe we're going to get there. We're not there yet. So it's a bit like if you're hanging out in the symbolic level, you're in grade 6, you're a big fish in a little pond, you move to year 7, secondary school, you go right back to the tribal level because you're a small fish in a big pond. We cycle between all 3 columns. So when I first started this work a long time ago, it was how many symbolics have I got? And you know, the fact that you even asked the question says you put yourself back here, because it's not about how many symbolics you've got. I'm actually not even interested in the symbolics in the chart reading, because it says you've got a handle on this over here. The gifts to me are what's in the tribal, because that's what's unconscious in you. That's what can trip you up. That's what you need to pay attention to, because they're the tricky bits. And some tribals, archetypes at the tribal level, are benign. Some are positively dangerous because of the illnesses they spell. And then depending on where they're sitting in the house. And they can really be most uncomfortable. I can remember I had a meditation retreat at Jamison, and it was given to me in a vision. You'll build a meditation retreat at Jamison. It was like, oh yeah, where's Jamison? You'll build a labyrinth. Oh yeah, what's a labyrinth? And so it goes on, but I tend to follow instructions. I built it with my ex-husband, which I couldn't have done without him. But I also knew that it was going to be a massive change in my life, and it may not necessarily work out for me. So when I was shown that in the vision that it would be a risk. So my 44-year marriage broke up. And as I was leaving Jamison, not knowing where I was going, driving away into the sunset, you know how they do it in movies, literally wandered up and down Australia, I had 10 archetypes sitting at the tribal level, which was totally appropriate, because I was full of this stuff here. I had no idea where I was going. I was walking away from everything that I created. I didn't know how I was going to survive or any of those sorts of things. But it's an interesting thing when you do the charts to see your progress as you move between the columns, because you will. It will chart where you're at enormously. So you need certain qualities to hang out over here. At least you need lots, but the main 5, the first ones are discipline and commitment. It's the discipline that brings people undone. What do you mean I have to get up at 6 o'clock and meditate for half an hour? No, it's too cold. I'm going to stay in bed. What do you mean I have to exercise more or I have to get fitter? What do you mean about all this sort of stuff or whatever's required? In the tribal level, we want everything handed to us in a platter, and there's no way we want to be out of our comfort zone, because this is all about staying in your comfort zone. But if you look at your life's history, I bet you've never learned anything by staying in your comfort zone. It just doesn't happen at this point on our planet. Unfortunately, it takes this stuff for you to really learn. So it's the discipline and commitment that will be really tested on, whether we've got it or not. The next 3rd and 4th qualities that you have to hang out here are faith and trust. But I mean real faith and trust, where you walk your walk and talk your talk, not head stuff. It's so easy. We've got such a plethora of material on the planet these days where you can read about anything and you can learn till the cows come home. But that doesn't mean to say you've integrated it, and it doesn't mean to say it's real. So this is real faith and trust, where you're totally congruent and walking your walk and talking your talk, not just head knowledge. The last thing you need here in this column to hang out here is discernment. Discernment is critical over in that column, because there's an enormous amount of people out there promising to fix you, heal you, give you this, give you that, whatever it is. And a lot of them haven't got, the faith and trust behind them. It's all book stuff more than anything else. In the tribal level, because it's all fear-based, because it's all physically based, because it's unconscious, one of the things, if I could wave a magic wand, one of the things I'd get rid of on the planet, if I had the ability to, is judgment. Because in my line of work, and I know there's people in the room that would totally agree with me as well that do the same sort of work, this all judgment does, and you can't not be judgmental, you can't not be, it's conditioned. So what judgment does is separate you out from your true nature. The only purpose from judgment is to try you into good, bad, right, wrong. There's no other purpose to judgment. It makes you good or them bad. It makes you right or them wrong. There is zero purpose to judgment. It's just separated you out from your high self, from who you truly are. What we do need is this, discernment. And some people aren't quite sure what I mean by the difference between judgment and discernment. So you could be walking through a park and you see a really, really bad bench. If you're into judgment, you'll say, God, the person who made that should drop dead. That's shocking. That's a judgment because you're criticising. Discernment is, that's a badly made bench. No judgment towards it. It's just discernment. So we must have this quality to survive in the symbolic level. So there's 3 ways in the tribal level that we can lose our energy field before you've even got out of bed in the morning. And they're critical things to understand. The first quality, which is where we project our energy to the past, because in the tribal level, you'll live either in the past or the future. You'll not be here in present space and time, you'll live in the past or the future. There's an archetype called the myth archetype, MYTH, and that's absolutely dangerous at the tribal level. Behind every person I've dealt with bowel cancer, IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, Crohn's disease, I promise you, they've got the myth archetype running. They are living in the past with regrets, shame, bitterness, anger, vengeance, guilt. Because religion indoctrinates quite a bit of that into you, as well as culture, everything else that goes on. So people that are living in the past, and there are some cultures that believe that's where they should be. If somebody dies, they grieve for the rest of their life and they wear black for the rest of their life. They're absolutely, utterly stuck in the past, but that's not where your point of power is. So the people that run the myth archetype are living totally in the past, and it's absolutely dangerous to your health, I promise you, to live there. The next way we lose our energy field is to the future through worry. Worry is so utterly misconstrued into caring and compassion, and that's absolute bullshit. I'm sorry. There is zero purpose to worry. And yet we say, A classic story, my ex-mother-in-law, something happened and we didn't tell her about whatever the event was for 3 or 4 weeks, and she said to me, "You should have told me earlier, dear, I could have been worrying about it for you." Because that was her truth, and that's what she meant was kind and caring, because that's what she misconstrued it. Because here you believe you're just the physical you, but over here on this column you understand who you are is a total energetic being and your total energy. And so here you understand you are a spiritual being having a human experience. Here you think you're just the physical and nothing more than that. So the worry archetype is a killer. I've literally seen it give people brain tumours, let alone ulcers, let alone digestive problems, and we're addicted to it. It is a major, major addiction, is to worry, because we're taught that's what makes you a kind, caring person and considerate. It's absolute rubbish. It's a total misuse of your energy field, and I'll look forward to the day when this stuff is taught in schools where it belongs. So if you're really worried about a person or an event or something that's going on in the planet, and please don't worry about the planet. She's always has and always will, totally, absolutely knows how to take care of herself. She's an amazing being. You just have to be mindful on her, but you don't necessarily have to fix her. She always has and she always will fix herself. So you're much better fixing you and getting rid of the belief systems and attitudes that don't serve you anymore. So with worry, if you're worried about something, then all you're doing is projecting fear to that event, to that issue of what's happening. Instead, if you hang out over here, then how you deal with that is to see the person or the event that you're concerned about whole in their integrity, living to the fullness of their being, walking their talk, absolutely being guided by their passion and their higher self, and being totally congruent and in their integrity. That's the only way to see any situation. Ask me how I know. My younger son did horrible drugs for 15 years, and so did the lot. And so, you know, he turned me completely grey because of that. There was nothing I could do about it, and Spirit showed me that he was going to have a car smash, and he may or may not survive it. It's, you know, sometimes we don't want the visions that we see. So he's what taught me how to handle worry, because it was killing me, absolutely killing me. So I switched, and I just held that vision for years about him. Now what was a pain to me over here, he's over here now and he's a joy. He is now. He's got all the M's. He hasn't married, he's got a mortgage instead, and he's got 2 gorgeous kids, and he's got a house and blah, blah, blah. So there were many times I didn't think he was going to make it, but he has, and just worrying about him was pointless, absolutely pointless to me. So the archetype that sits here for the past is the myth. The one that sits into the future is the worry archetype. But the third way we lose energy in this column is through judgment. Again, there's a judge archetype. You cannot not judge because you're indoctrinated into it. From the moment you're born, how cute are you? Where do you come in the school system? First, second, third. Where do you come in the grade? You know, how do you look as you become a teenager? Do you fit with the peer group model? What happens? Are you good? Are you kind? What is it? All these labels that we put on things, which is all another name for judgment. All it does is put you in a box. All it does is make you think you should be somewhere else, and the media has a lot to be accountable for. There's an awesome, as an aside, an awesome video on the feminine that every female should go and watch by a lady called Blumfeld, whatever. It's called, I'm just saying it and I can't even remember the name of it. Oh, what did I see the other day? It's the Australian Aware or Embrace. Thanks, Julie. Yeah, have you seen it?
No.
Oh, go and see it. Every female should see it. It's awesome. So real, so raw. But she's so hit the spot.
It's a film.
It's a doco. And it's on all over the place, and people can show the screenings wherever they want. It's really, really worth seeing. It's about, you know, the message we've been sold as females, of course. So the judgment is how we lose our energy field in present time and space. You have to judge something to worry about it. It's a judgment to worry about it. So those 3 archetypes sitting at the tribal level, myth, judge and warrior, If they're in a certain house, in the 6th house of work and health, they can kill you. They can make you very sick. So the original, what I was talking about when I was doing this was when my ex-husband was building Jamison. We'd been wiped out financially. We had nothing left. So I was working 16-hour days in Melbourne doing the charts to get Jamison built. And then I had a very clear dream that showed me I was about to die of leukemia if I continued doing that. And then I did a chart, because charts always confirm your dreams. They're awesome. And I had trouble all the way through, especially in the House of Work and Health. So I rang him up and said, I'm sorry, but you have to come back to Melbourne to work and I have to go up there. I've just been shown very clearly I'll cark it if I keep doing what I'm doing. He was not happy because he loved doing what he was doing up there. I said, you've got a choice. You can have a live wife or a dead one. But, what was the point of killing yourself in doing a vision that was going to serve other people and you died in the process? That's the epitome of martyr that sits here at the tribal level. So some archetypes that sit at tribal are positively dangerous. The ideal column is to have the archetypes hanging out here in the symbolic level. But as I said, I've never seen anyone with all 12 yet, and that's a lot of archetypes, so a lot to do. If I'm going to be crude, rude and unattractive, you can relate this map of the world to anything really, but I'll relate it to sex since it's such a common thing. Here you have a genital orgasm in the tribal level, here you have a heart orgasm, and here you have a crown orgasm, which they tell me goes on for days. Mm-hmm. So if anybody's experienced it, please share it with us. So there's many different ways I can keep on explaining it, and I can keep adding to it. But any questions so far about what's going on, or can you even relate, or is it a load of rubbish? Does it make sense to you?
No.
Does it make sense? Shirley, does it fit with you?
Yes, it does.
You can do it?
Yes.
Yeah, Ches knows about it, and Evie, you know about some of this too. And how do you feel? Helen, is it a new map for you?
No.
No, Julie knows.
No, it's not a new map at all. I can relate to a lot of it.
Yeah, it's Jung's levels of consciousness.
Yeah.
But when you tie it in with the archetypes, it shows you exactly where you're at and what you're doing to hold yourself up. So it's a great map that says, where am I sitting right now, when you can see yourself experiencing behaviours or watching how things keep playing out in your life. How's it worked out for you, Barb? That
I think I'm in the mind.
in the mind?
In the mind.
Okay.
Definitely.
Well, we all are. You can't not be. This is the mind realm. You can't not be. But it is the biggest lesson is to learn how to move over to here because this is all about the journey of the heart. And that's why often people say to me, why the hell would I choose to come here? If this is a choice and I choose to come here and I choose my incarnation and my parents and everything else, why would I come here when there's so much pain and suffering, particularly in the tribal level? And the only explanation I can give is that you earn so many extra brownie points when you wake up in a planet where the majority of us aren't awake, where 80% of the planet lives here in this column. And you can feel so alone when you're doing this journey here. But to wake up and become the heart here in a place where there's hardly any. So in here you will love conditionally in the tribal level. So often when people say to me, oh, I love that person unconditionally, I want to go,
Yeah.
because it's a joke. Because what they mean is, I love that person because they've never crossed me, they've never disappointed me, they've never yelled at me or called me anything. Watch what happens to you if you love someone. If you say you love someone unconditionally and they turn around and call you all the names under the sun and spit venom at you. It's a rare soul that can stay here in the heart and not shut down. Because our first instinct is to contract and shut down. Because that's what we do, because this is the planet of fear and we're brought up with fear as our default mechanism here. And that's what we have to undo, the fear-based training we've been given. Please don't hear me blaming anyone for giving us that. We're all here of our own volition. We all chose to come here. There's nobody to blame. We've come here to experience all of this. And as a child, as I said, up until puberty, you have to take on board everything that's been given to you. It's what you've come here for, to take on board everything that your parents have given you. In your teenage years, you're meant to start moving into here. into the individuation column and rebelling against everything that you've been taught. But for a lot of us, me in particular, I was too busy doing good girl. It wasn't safe to rebel. So if you don't do it in your teenage years and you're doing good girl or good boy, which is a common archetype that we all share, then you have to usually wait till something called Saturn return, which happens around 27, 28, 29. So think about what you were doing around about that age, because it's usually something that's life-changing, something that often you'll get married, you'll go overseas, you'll change your career, you'll have a child, something like that will happen to you to challenge your reality. If you don't do it at Saturn return, you'll get some other opportunities. The second Saturn returns mid-50s when you get another chance. But often by the time, if you've ignored everything about what your soul essence is trying to tell you by your 30s and particularly by your 40s, good luck in your 50s, because that's when illnesses will really start to kick in. Because often if you don't listen to the whispers and have to hear a shout, the only way you leave for your soul essence, your heart to contact you, is through illness. Because we don't listen any other way. We're so silly like that. We have to, and again, I've had a PhD in illness this lifetime. So I really understand. It's a hard journey to do it when you have to wake up through illness. It's much better if you hear the whispers and don't have to hear a shout, but that's a skill. It's a real skill that we have to learn how to develop. So we are here to learn to live from this. And so to bring the mind's the best computer you'll ever own, but it cannot, never will, and it's impossible for it to contain the truth. It just contains the program that you've been given by everyone else around you. It is not the truth of who you are. You are in essence. You come from here where you are a being of light, pure light energy, but your memory is taken away from you in the birth canal. And it's wiped out for good reason. Because here on the earth plane, if you remembered everything about who you are, that's why a lot of people end up in mental homes, because they do remember and they can't cope with who they are. So we have to do the journey gradually. And we move between all the columns up and down many, many times. So there's more I can go on with, but I've got no idea of the time. Do you want to have a cuppa and then we'll come back and I can do some more about what's going on? You want me to sit there? I don't know.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, please.
Just in regards to like the tarot, when you're going through this, I'm wondering where does justice sit?
Yeah, the Justice card's a great card, isn't it? So all the archetypes are relevant, so it depends what level you're talking about. So justice at the tribal level can be a few things, how it happens. It can be that because you've been stepped on all your life, because you've been bullied, whatever it is. In the tribal level, it can mean one of two things. It can mean that you actually have to learn how to stand up for yourself and speak your truth and walk your walk. Or it could mean that it's in reversal, justice in reverse, and instead you are coming from, because justice over here implies wisdom, that you're coming from a profound sense of wisdom because the mind and the heart are together. But here in the tribal level, it can be just mind and you're ruling, you think you're ruling for the good of the whole, but they never get to have a word because you become the dictator and you deliver your sense of justice from over here. So all the tarot can be switched into here. There's many different ways. So we all share 4 main archetypes, every single one of us. So that's child, victim, prostitute and saboteur. The fact that you have a body, the child archetype arises, and there's many variations to the child. The spoiled child, the wounded child, something called the pure eternus, which is the Peter Pan syndrome of the child who never wanted to grow up, and the classic of that's Michael Jackson. He had his childhood taken away from him. He was trying to recapture his childhood right up until when he died. When the child's at the tribal level, it's frozen in time and space somewhere because it's in absolute fear, it's retaining cellular memory that doesn't necessarily serve it anymore, and the child is terrified. You could have 11 archetypes at the symbolic level. If your child's at tribal, you're not going anywhere because you have to rescue the child from the terror of what's going on and heal it. Whereas when the child's over here at the symbolic level, it's saying, right, I'm sick of this crap, let's get this show on the road, I don't care what it's going to take, I'm going to do it. I am not letting anything get in the way. When the child's at symbolic level, it's the best news on the chart. When you've got victim at tribal, we all share these 4 archetypes. When you've got victim at tribal, you need to blame everyone else for where you're at. It's their fault, it's nothing to do with you. So it's your parents, the government, the school system fault. You take zero responsibility for what's going on and you feel hopeless and helpless and you don't believe you can shift anything. When you've got victim over here at the symbolic level, it means that you remember that you wrote the script before you got here, that therefore with all the trials and tribulations you're experiencing, at the same time you wrote in all the answers. Because there's no such thing as just one side. You're a combination of everything. So you've got all the wisdom, and so over here the victim takes responsibility and says, how am I not listening to myself? How am I not hearing my higher guidance? What am I not doing to allow that to come in? So the victim takes full responsibility for what's going on, and they certainly don't ever blame anyone else. Here in the tribal level, when you've got prostitute, which is a name that confuses people because it's got nothing about a career change, what the prostitute asks is, how am I selling myself short and how am I putting myself out of my integrity? That's what the prostitute means. At the tribal level, you'll totally be putting yourself out of your integrity. And that could look any which way. Typically, it plays out with women staying in relationships that no longer serve them, but they stay there to feel safe, what will other people think, for the kudos that comes with it, and it kills you. The prostitute is a very dangerous archetype. Typically for blokes, it's men staying in jobs they hate, but for the same reason. I won't get another one, what will other people think, I need to have this. And it's very dangerous, prostitute at this level. Over here, in the symbolic level, you will not sell yourself short. You are, because here, in the tribal level, you're told you're only worthwhile if you serve others all the time. And so you have to put others before your needs, especially if you're a female. You have to absolutely serve everyone else. If you do it any other way, you're told here that you're selfish. If you don't do that. Over here, instead what it becomes is self-love. Because you recognise over here, I wasn't brought up with any religion, thank goodness, so I didn't have much to undo. But over here you understand there's only one commandment, to learn to love yourself, your fellow man and the divine equally. But where are you taught about this? No one. There's no role models for it anywhere. And what does self-love look like anyway? What it means for you, Jude, and what it means for me can be 2 different things. But it's all about putting yourself in equality to everything else in your life. When you start moving into the middle column, you have to become narcissistic for a while. Because it takes that to move away from the tribal programming. Because they'll tell you you've changed. I don't like you so much anymore. What's happened to you? You're not the nice person you used to be. And that's because you're doing this journey. And it's very alone when you start to do this journey, but over here it comes into balance, where the mind and the heart comes together. You can still serve others over here, but you serve yourself totally in equality with what you're doing with everyone else. So the journey into self-love is huge, because we're not taught to value the heart and what it really means. And the heart, thank God there's institutes out there now like the Heart Math Institute in America is awesome for showing you don't just have a brain up here or a mind, there's one equally in your heart, and they can so validate all this stuff with quantum physics now. It's awesome what they're proving about what it means to hang out over in this column. So the prostitute is dangerous at the tribal level, but at the symbolic level you will not sell yourself short for anything or anyone, because self-love is in place. You just won't do that to yourself, because you'll pay a price for it. It's like you might be gluten intolerant or whatever, or can't stand wheat and you won't eat it, and you pay a price, you feel crap, and it's like that's what self-love looks like. You just don't do that sort of thing to yourself anymore because you value yourself too much. The last archetype that we all share is called the saboteur. The saboteur's function is to challenge you every time you go to make change in your life. That's what it will do. Are you sure? What if I stuff up? What if I make a fool of myself? What if something goes wrong? What will other people think of me? That's its role. That's what it does to you. It will challenge you every time. But over here at the symbolic level, you recognise the game plan. So every time Spirit has told me, we want you to go to the south of France to do the Magdalene Trail, we need you to go to Peru, we need whatever, and I hear it and I get it very clearly. I say yes, I ground it immediately, I book an airline ticket, whatever I have to do, and then within 48 hours the saboteur will kick in and say, what are you doing that for? You know, are you sure? You know, do you know anyone? What happens if it doesn't work out? I just say, hi saboteur, bye saboteur, because I'm so used to the game, because it just happens. Now we all, outside of the main 4, then you'll have 8 archetypes that are individual to just you. And they'll change. When I did this work with Carolyn 20 years ago, she maintains that the first, you know, apart from the main 4, the other 8 archetypes that you choose will be with you for the rest of your life. I actually radically disagree with that, because I am not the same person I was in my 30s, and I think a lot of you would say the same, because thank God you've grown. I mean, people say to me, oh, I found the chart you did 10 years ago and I listened to it and it's still exactly the same. Isn't that wonderful? And I go, no. You're meant to have moved on from where you were 10 years ago. You're meant to take advantage of what was going on with it all. So I believe we're in such a fast changing society right now. The energies are so strong, and you're here at a time right now in August 2016 where what's happening astrologically is unprecedented on the planet in terms of shifting us, or the possibility of shifting us. So how many people in the room, either what's happening to them or around them with their friendship groups, where the shit is hitting the fan so big, the crises that are happening around them. Maybe I'm just in my job. Janice, are you seeing a lot about people in absolute crisis and hitting brick walls? Julie, are you seeing that as well? It's just everywhere that I'm seeing it, because in Indian terms we're in a time called Kali Yuga, which is the time of great chaos and great awakening. But because this planet we're living in now is based on absolutely 2 words here, and I'm running out of space, but it's based on greed and suffering in the tribal level. And we are not allowed to continue that anymore. We're simply not allowed to. So whether we want to shift, I have no doubt whatsoever. We're also here in the middle column of chaos and madness, and I have absolutely no doubt that us as a planetary level of consciousness is heading over there. Now that could take another 200 years. I don't know, which is a blink of an eye still in the scheme of things. I'm not sure how much I'll see in my lifetime, but I have absolutely no doubt we're going to be heading over there. I have 9 grandkids, and I look at 3 of them in particular, and what they're capable of and what they're doing blows my socks off. And their awareness and what they're doing and who they are on the planet. So I actually think we're in good hands, but considering 80% of us sit here, and what we're addicted to is our comfort zone, and we do not want to move from here. So here you won't deal with anything that's going on in your life. My brother, bless his cotton little socks, is seriously ill in hospital right now, because his life has been, for his 71 years, when he hasn't liked what's going on, he gets in a truck and he just drives around Australia. That was his job. But now, because he's seriously ill, he can't move 1 inch without oxygen right now. And so his worst nightmare, which we're all capable of bringing to ourselves right now, is coming to fruition. He's stuck, and he's facing himself, and he's here, big time here. Because there's nothing he's ever dealt with. He just walks away from it. But that's his journey, and I don't have to rescue him from that. But that's what's happening. He's just an example of what's happening everywhere. So it's like, for me, I see that for a lot of us, even though you can, all sorts of horrible stuff can be going on right now, it may not be where you're at right now, it may be what's gone on from your past and it's coming up to be cleared and purified. Because if you, at your soul essence, want to hang out over here, you have to wake up and you have to clear, you have to realise who you really are, and remember, you know, you are a spiritual being having a human experience, not the other way around, and you're so much more than just the body mind, so much more. It'd blow your socks if you saw who you really were in the scheme of things. So there's a message I'm leaving with you. Please remember that this is what your true nature is. You're not mind, it's just a tool. It's just a computer, the best computer you ever own. But it's not the truth. It never has been and never will be. Please remember who you are more than anything else. Thank you.